2 people every day are dying in Britain through homelessness on the street. There's no minute silence, there's no talk in the newspaper, nothing, you know.
The report says that the number of people sleeping on the streets up by 134%.
The biggest key thing to trying to change homelessness is to get as many people aware of the whole situation in the first place. A lot of people that I have experienced within the jobbing have never had a life that I would call a life.
The government doesn't seem to understand the problem or even measure it.
Too much of a high percentage of our homeless people have the 3 strands. They have the homelessness, the mental health and the addiction. You can find a hopelessness in that. That's what we don't want. We're here to help and encourage these guys.
Tell me about you, man. Like, you've been doing this for 9 years, you know? The guys like you, they trust you, they know you. How do you keep doing this?
I'm doing it because I've lost 2 cousins to addictions. My last one was the year before last, and he was my closest cousin that I had. And just the addiction was too much for him. I have no doubt that anybody can change. And when I hear that Sanso's doing this or doing that, I'm encouraged. That encourages me. That gives me hope. Hope that we can do this. I hope that people can change. But I need to impart that same hope that I have for every individual into that individual as well.
Are we ever going to solve the problem of homelessness?
More people can step forward like you are. Make change in our society a part of your life is what I would say. And that's where you need to get to. You need to get to a place where people can see what's in front of them, something to thrive for, something to live for, something to make a change.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
Homelessness is something that most of us have exposure to. In fact, behind me and all around the streets, we see it all the time, but a lot of times we don't really understand it. And maybe in the back of our mind, we think maybe they should get a job or stop drinking or stop being so lazy, when in fact, it's much more complicated than that. Luckily, we got the chance to go deeper and to try to understand this whole phenomenon of homelessness. And this year, we decided to take Thanksgiving celebration, which is a holiday in America where we cook a turkey and surround ourselves with friends and family. And we decided to cook for 100 homeless people here in London. The entire team of London Real and my wife Mariana did it with the SCT here in London, and that's the Spitalfields Crypt Trust. And they feed some 5,000 homeless people every year. And it was an incredible experience. And I got to meet a guy named Davidge. And he is the guy that's on the ground with these people. He gets involved in their personal lives. And he taught me so much about what actually goes on in the street. 83 to 90% of these people are addicted to alcohol or drugs. So many times there's been cases of childhood trauma. And there's a lot of dynamics going on here. And we really need to understand what's going on. And so myself and the team, we really got direct exposure to these people and they were amazing. I heard their stories. There was a lot of hugs and some laughs and some crying. And hopefully this episode will help you understand this situation of homelessness and how you can be effective, how you can help, how you can contribute, and how we can help these people get their lives back on track. We're all really just a few steps away from being in this situation. So watch this episode and find out how you can help. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Gary Davidge, manager for the Homeless Drop-In Center of the Spitalfields Crypt Trust right here in Shoreditch, London. Every day, you work hands-on helping the homeless community, serving some 6,000 meals to over 500 people last year. In the past decade, you have introduced pre-abstinence groups and education programs, and in the next 5 years, you plan to launch specific programs for women and addiction recovery. Yesterday, myself and the entire team at London Real served Thanksgiving dinner with you to over 100 people at your drop-in center, with my wife pretty much doing all of the cooking. Gary, welcome to London Real.
Thank you. Thanks
for being here, man. First of all, massive thanks for yesterday, man. It was really an epic day for us, and I look to you and your whole team for making it all happen. So thank you. I appreciate that. I think we first spoke in our entire life about a week ago on the phone.
That's right, yeah.
Right? And so just to give people some background, I contacted you guys like about 8 days ago or 9 days ago and said, hey, how would you feel if we helped you put on a Thanksgiving meal? It's a big important holiday for me, and my team will help out. And you guys have been doing this work since 1965. I've been living in Shoreditch since kind of 2009, and I always saw St. Leonard's Church, which is a big epic place here in Shoreditch if people don't know. And I always could see you guys were doing things there. I could see there was a drop-in center and kind of a halfway house where people could live, but I didn't know much about it. But I also knew there was a homeless community and there was a need. So reached out to you guys. At first, I don't know what you guys thought. Maybe I was a little crazy. But we met, and then we made it happen, and you passed all these flyers out, and yesterday the whole team went over and we cooked and sat down and hung out and spoke with all of these people, and yeah, it was really eye-opening and really powerful for us. So thanks for that, man.
No, that's great. No, for me on my side of it is that the biggest key thing to trying to change homelessness is to get as many people aware of the whole situation in the first place. And most people turn on their tellies and they see statistics, but the statistics don't cut it until you actually sit down with someone, hear a story and realise the situation. And so to have all of you guys come in is brilliant for me, because most people won't just walk in, but when they're in their comfort zone, they've got people that they know around them, people that they work with, they're doing it together. It's not so scary. And so you leading that with your team is what we need as many people as possible to be doing in order to change the whole view in society of why someone is homeless. And so all of your guys yesterday, apart from serving us and serving the homeless people and that, they got to experience some lives that some of them that have been changed by the work that SC2 has done. Some of them, that's yet to happen, but we hope for that to happen in the future. But definitely for your guys, I hope that their life, their perspective has begun to change about their thoughts and feelings around homeless people.
Yeah, very much so. One guy said that he sat and spoke for probably 20, 30 minutes with a guy who had lost a job on Monday and had been homeless since. And he just told everyone here, he said, you know, you're all 3 paychecks away from maybe being in a similar situation. And I heard a lot of stories from people there, you know, crazy stories, you know, people that had had big success and now were down on their luck or didn't have a place to sleep or were struggling with addiction. But once you sit down and talk to these people, they're normal people. They're just in difficult circumstances. And it's easy to ignore the homeless and to walk by them and to not look at them. So like this was our chance to kind of really start opening our eyes and having a relationship and trying to understand what's really going on, you know, as opposed to just thinking it's, I don't know, somebody who did something wrong or who doesn't understand what they should do, because there's a lot more going on here, right?
Yeah, and I appreciate that it's scary as well, you know, like when you're walking down the street, you know, I mean, you can turn on your telly every night and they'll talk about a stabbing in London. You know, you hear about random stabbings. And our mindset that's put to us is almost that, like, there's people that are mentally ill, they end up on the street, and this is the person that does it. It's not always the case, but our mindset is still set in that way. And so I appreciate that when people walk down the street, it can be scary to have to, or to make that step to go and speak to someone. But like you experienced yesterday, these are normal people. You know, I'd say like if people have done things in their past, it's been when they've been younger. And a lot of these guys that we have in our drop-in are 35 plus, both men and women. And if they've done something wrong, they know they don't want to go down that road anymore because they just don't see the point in it. And actually most of them by this point, they're now broken people that need help to put their lives back together. And so, you know, the more that we can put that word out that people just need support and help. And it's the community that's got to change that, not just the homeless community, not just people that have been in that position in the past, and definitely not just people that have grown up with similar backgrounds. You know, that many of our people that are homeless just need inspiring to believe that they can do more. And until they start seeing other people like them that are inspiring them to do a bit more, it's going to be a struggle for them to believe that they can do it. But I've seen plenty of potential within many homeless people, and they can easily be someone that can inspire others, but they need to start believing for themselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, I gave my speech up on the stage. First of all, I gave a horrible rendition of the Thanksgiving story with the pilgrims going on the Plymouth Rock and the Native Americans, which I had to study on YouTube. But I did that, and I was explaining, I was talking to everybody at the table and telling them. But then I told about my story of struggling with addiction and an overdose, and how I moved to London to actually change my life. So London kind of saved me, and how I'd been clean from heroin for coming up on 17 years. And sober from alcohol almost 2 years. And then some of the guys came up to me afterwards. They were like, what? That's you, but look at you. Look at you. You couldn't have done that. And I was like, yeah, of course. But I was in a bad mindset around bad people, and I couldn't see a way out, you know. And so it was nice to talk to them about that, you know.
Yeah, no, that's great.
You could just see a lot of eyes open up. And something you told me when I went to visit the center before we went there is you said, Brian, people come in here and we pass out the croissants and the coffees and the teas and the meals. We're trying to start a conversation. And that can take months to build trust till you even get someone's name. But that's how maybe you get someone to talk about what's going on. You said 83 to 90% people are suffering from addiction to something, and maybe people can talk about wanting recovery if they want it and next steps. So like I told my whole team there, I said, we got to go there. We're not there just serving meals. We're supposed to talk to people because maybe that's the start of their recovery. But I didn't realize that till you told me, you know?
Yeah, and that's why, like, you know, we potentially could have done that meal with 5 or 6 of us, you know. But yeah, the whole point is not just we chuck out another meal. We give meals 4 days a week on our normal week. And really we're giving meals to draw people in because they're hungry, right? But then from then, our whole purpose is how can we get their lives moving on? How can we get them into pre-abstinence class? How can we get them along to doing an art class where we have an art therapist in there? How can we get along to women's class? How can we get them into a smaller group where we can actually have a meaningful conversation, you know? And most of our meaningful conversations, almost all of them, do not happen when we've got 50 people in a room having a food and talking. But we want to deal with their basic needs, but also we want to get them on benefits where we can in order to be able to get them into accommodation, in order to progress them maybe into abstaining from their whatever their addiction is, and then get them into work placements and get them into a job that you know. Our strapline is putting lives back together. Sometimes I think our strapline should be putting lives together, because some people, a lot of people that I have experienced within the drop-in have never had a life that I would call a life. So to say to put it back, I don't want them to have what they had before. I want them to have what I've got now. You know, I don't want them to have a crappy life where, you know, where they may not be in addiction, but the rest of their family is, and they don't want to see their family anymore because this is the situation. I want them to, you know, be able to go and get a good job where they can earn a salary that means they ain't got to stress out every day. They're not having to go and work 12 hours a day in order just to put bread on the table. I want them to have a fulfilled life.
How much of this stuff comes from childhood trauma, and then sometimes that can lead to addiction, and then that can lead to homelessness and hopelessness, and then pretty soon you don't know where one starts and the other ends. I was speaking with some like your CEO and some of the other guys in the management, and they were like, oh, you've had Dr. Gabor Mate on, and he talks a lot about trauma causing addiction. I mean, you must see this in all the stories, right?
Yeah, us, do you know what, I can tell you them without saying names, you know, we've got one guy who grew up in care. His mum had an overdose when he's a child. His dad was never about. His sister had an overdose when he was about 13. She was only 18 at the time, and he has struggled his whole life, you know, because this is a situation, and now he's doing reasonably well right at this moment. He's not coming into the drop-in. We communicate by text, and he's doing okay, you know, but this is the first time, and he's 43 years old, it's the first time that he's made that step to be abstinent from the things that he struggled with. Got another guy who's fell out of a window when he was 2 years old. His dad dropped him out of a window onto his head when he was 2 years old. I didn't know his name for about 5 years. He just went by an alias, and that alias was given to him because when he fell out the window, it was because the police came in. And he tried to shoot the police. His dad tried to shoot the police. And in the process of that, he dropped his child out the window onto his head. Now, if you're growing up and you've got a head injury from the age of 2, both your parents are addicts, you've not really had much. You spend half your time in care and out of care, you know. I probably don't know the full story of how bad it got, but just that in itself is enough to think to yourself, if that's me, am I any different? You know, do I see that all of that stuff happened to me, but yet I grow up into, you know, working in a good place where I can earn enough money to not have to stress out about other stuff, or do I see myself in exactly the same position? And I think for the majority of people that have that story, you know, no matter what walk of life they're coming from, it would be very hard for them to say, no, I would have thrived in that still. I'd still be where I am, even if that was my upbringing. And like you said, it's like, it's on every person that walks in the door, there's something, you know, and there are very few cases where people come in and say, I had a really good life, everything was going well for me, and then I just decided to start doing this. It's just, but that's not to say it doesn't happen, that's just the people that I see. Because the people that does happen for, people that find themselves in addiction, no matter their situation has been, on the face of it, quite cool and cushy, they don't come much often because they still have that family support. The people that had a good family support growing up still have that family support, even when they're in the middle of their addiction and when they came through it. Yeah. You know, so, and that's the big difference. For many of my guys, the reason why they never had that family support. And for, like I said to you before, the vast majority of people that are dabbling in addiction are white-collared staff in the city. But most of them, they have supportive families around them. Yeah. They know what it is to be what society considers normal. And so they have a working relationship with their addiction. Yeah, well, one of the guys came up to me and said, how'd you stay out of jail with your addictions? And I kind of looked at him, and that's why this was such a great day for all of us tomorrow, because I really got to understand this other side. And I thought, well, why would I be in jail? And then I thought about it. It was because I had something still. I had a support structure. I could still manage to find a job. I still maybe had a little money in the bank, but I wasn't that low. And that's what kept me out of jail. But to him, he was just like, for me, that's my option. When I get addicted, I'm in jail because that's what it leads to. So yeah, you're totally right. And you said something to my whole team when we got there yesterday, and you talked about addiction and drugs and how it related to the people that are going to come into the drop-in and the rest of the people in London. And I was wondering if you could explain your perspective on that. Do you mean when I said about the percentage of people on the street using drugs are the vast minority of people that are actually using drugs? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. Well, first of all, what is the percentage of the people that are using drugs, and how does that play out? And then, yeah, what's that perspective about the rest of the population? Because it's
It's a good perspective, or however you want to tell it.
Yeah, so when I'm talking openly in a forum like that, I can talk openly about my own feelings around it, and I can tell you stuff that I've heard. When I talk on camera like that, I like to be a bit more like, this is where you can find this statistic and stuff like that. So if we talk about 83% of people on the street have some form of addiction, you can find that evidence on Homeless Link. They'll have a file there and it'll show you the percentage of people with addiction. I'm not sure where you'd find the percentage of people, but my understanding is always, well, for more recent times, that it's like 1 in 5 of people that are addicts are on the street, and that the 4 in 5 are in white-collar jobs in the city. And that kind of makes sense if you think about it, because the £14 to buy 2 shots of crack and heroin is not sustaining a drug dealer.
Is that what it costs?
That's what it costs in Tower Hamlets at the moment. It's the cheapest place in Britain.
Tower Hamlets.
Yeah, so
it's the cheapest place in Britain.
Yeah, so Hackney is a bit more money, but not much more money for that.
Okay, and what do you get for £14?
They say that you go and get 2 and 2. So if you pick up a phone, to be honest, if you went to any phone box in this area, press redial and ask for 2 and 2, that's what you're getting.
Serious?
Yeah, wow. So the price might change, but you know, that's what you'd get. You know,
I would get 2 hits of
crack and 2 of heroin, yeah.
So I get 4 hits, basically.
Yeah.
And the heroin would be to shoot, and the crack would be to smoke.
Yeah, and in the, you know, like, not for people at home to be trying this, but the crack kind of like tails off the come down, so it just prolongs the so that you don't have a massive up and then straight down again.
Okay, the crack does that, or the heroin does that?
The crack does that. The heroin will take you high and then straight back down, and the crack kind of filters it out a little bit. And yeah, and it makes sense because, you know, like, the people that's got the money are in the city, right? So for some people, I'm not saying for all people, but for some people to lose 3, 5, even 10 grand in a week, for some people it's not a big thing, you know. And so that's where that's where the money is if you're a dealer type thing.
And so the homeless people aren't supporting the dealers; they're
obviously supporting them, but not to the same extent. It's kind of like, you know, my clients are, you know, the corner shop, and in the city it's the Tesco's or the Waitrose. it's the big business, you know. And
so you always try to remind people that it's not a homeless phenomenon; it's a human phenomenon.
Yeah.
And yet we look at the homeless and say that looks like a drug addict.
Yeah.
And point at them, and they look like it, when in fact it's all around us, even us sometimes.
Yeah. And society doesn't accept this, you know. Like when we had Charles Kennedy, who was a Liberal Democrat leader a number of years ago, passed away due to alcohol abuse, mostly. You know, it was very sad, and people, oh, look how sad this is, and blah, blah, blah. But then when you hear 2 people every day are dying in Britain through homelessness on the street, and, you know, just pass us by, you know, there's no minute silence, there's no talk in the newspaper, you know, nothing, you know. But, you know, if we was to find out tomorrow that, I don't know, one member of the royal family or politician has died of an overdose, again, it will be, oh, look how sad it is, and, you know. But, you know, if from this chair where I sit, you know, where I live and work amongst many homeless people, that's our daily event. That's twice a day, you know, and we don't see anyone saying anything, you know. But every few months, you know, we should all have a minute's silence for Joe Bloggs, who was a Hollywood star, or, you know. And I'm not at all suggesting that it's not sad. It is. It's flipping terrible, but no more terrible. No life is worth more than another person's life, you know?
And yet we marginalize the homeless people.
I think that we do.
Why is that?
I don't know, maybe fear. Maybe you know, for the most cynical, maybe it's
You think
that they are less value.
They've given up, or it's their fault sometimes. Is that the way people...
Definitely, that's the big one, isn't it? You know, self-inflicted.
I think that's what people think. Oh, that person should just get a job. How do you feel when someone tells you that about one of your dropping people? Why don't they just get a job?
Then I'm more than happy. If one of my corporates or someone wants to come, they should go and get a job. I say, yeah, great. But then when should they start? They'll be around on Monday. You want them to do a job? Give them a job then. Help them.
Right, that's not the problem.
Yeah, I mean, like, all right, yeah, I say that tongue in cheek, but I mean, like, if we're getting people into recovery, if people are in Acorn House, they've done their time in Acorn House, they're in recovery now, maybe they're moving on to their move-on houses and they're trying to plug back into society. Society needs more businesses, more bosses that are going to say, look, I'll take a chance on them. And you know, and let's see people like SCT, other charities that work with homeless and addicted people as well. Let's see how they can work together with these people. You know, maybe someone like SCT or other charities, they need to come in and say, if you're willing to take a chance with these people, then we'll come in once every month, once every 6 weeks, and we'll do a supervision with them that will maybe integrate something around their addiction. Because what does most bosses know about addiction? You know, some will, you'll know about it, but most bosses won't, you know? So maybe that's something that needs to be looked into as we move forward as a strategy of making this happen, you know? Get the people that know about these things to come and do their part, and also having people take a chance on someone that maybe has a long criminal record, you know?
Yeah. Let me finish with the drugs. What other drugs do you have to worry about these days? Because there's all sorts of other ones that come your way. Yeah, and each one can mess people up and put them in mental states that are hard for you to work with, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of synthetic drugs at the moment. So synthetic cannabinoids like spice, black mamba, and then you've got the crystal meth that in this area at the moment, they call it special, and whether it's purely crystal meth or not, I'm not 100% sure, but you know, when they've done tests, I've known them to come back with cement in them and other sort of stuff as well, and you're like, putting cement in your veins is not gonna do you any good, and I'm not 100% sure at where the people are standing at the moment, but what I do know for a fact is that the synthetic drugs is definitely making people get psychosis a lot quicker. You know, and some people are going to say they have it in them already, it just brings it on sooner. Other people say, no, it's just completely because of the synthetic drugs. I don't know where it is, but either one ain't good. So, yeah, so we're living in a time when people can make it in their kitchen, you know?
And does the homelessness cause the drugs, or does the drugs cause the homelessness? How does that cycle work?
There's a combination of all three, really. So we have a lot of Eastern European guys, probably around 30 to 40% of our guys are Eastern European. And when they first came here, they came here for work, and they were working, they've lost their jobs, they find themselves on the street. I'm not saying they're never drunk, they did, but you know, for them, the idea is to have a couple of beers, to get their head down, to get a night's sleep, to go to work the next day if they can find it. But 6 months later, when they're still not able to rehouse themselves, that 2 beers ain't doing it. So now you're doing 7, 8 beers, and then 2 in the morning to get over the hangover, and you know, and then you're in full-blown addiction. And then, you know, maybe the beer is, you're drunk and someone offers you something else, and you find yourself walking down that road too. And I've seen that is the vast majority of the guys that I see that don't have recourse to public funds within dropping. That's the road that they take. Other people, it can be mental health that causes, that means that they go on to addiction. Some people are in the middle of an addiction, like we just said, and they have psychosis. They have just a one-off event in their life, but they keep using, and it's not going to get better. And so there are many paths, but what we find is too much of a high percentage of our homeless people have the 3 strands. They have the homelessness, the mental health, and the addiction. And yeah, and that's a hard road to walk, even if you're got a good support, which most of them don't have.
And that's the problem, is that every day your self-esteem goes down lower and lower and lower and lower. I mean, I can only imagine until where you probably don't even know where it is anymore, right?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, so say you're that guy from Eastern Europe who came in, you had some work for a while, you got laid off, you're still looking for work, but you're having a few beers, maybe you lose your house, and now you're having more, and now 6 months later, you kind of given up on that, and now and then you do that another 6 months. I mean, how do you ever get your head back up? You got no social structure, nobody wants to talk to you, you're not proud of yourself, then no one wants to hire you, now you're addicted. I mean, that's hard to get out of, man.
Yeah, and sometimes they have families. They want to see their families, but they don't want their families to see them the way that they are.
Right.
And so then they don't see their kids, and 10 years is gone. When they think about their kids, they're remembering a 4-year-old. Their kid's a 14-year-old feeling wrecked because their dad left them and never came back. You know?
Yeah. A lot of
But there is hope, Brian.
I know there is. I know.
There's hope.
And I want to talk about the hope next. You know, there was a Bulgarian guy you had at the drop-in, I think,
Yeah.
the gypsy guy. And my wife's Bulgarian and my stepdaughter's Bulgarian. And I think you told her the story of him. He came over here and you were trying to get him work. But in Bulgaria, the gypsies are like a second class. And the guys here at the construction sites wouldn't help him. But he was helping yesterday, I think.
He's always helping me.
He was awesome. And
Yeah.
I think my wife got really emotional last night, and she was just almost in tears, just seeing that happen and seeing it on the front line, and just seeing this guy who's obviously trying really hard to work really hard, and yet just doesn't have the opportunities. And yeah, I don't know, she was like in tears last night, just to see that inequity and to see that cycle going to where it's just not going to be repaired. It's just it was hard for her to just see, you know, in the front line, but it was also really good, because this is the reality, you know? So there was already a good point of that day, you know, just so, and my daughter could see that too, you know, because in Bulgaria, they're just the gypsies, and the gypsies do their own thing. But now she's getting like, it's here, she's like, wow, this is just really an inequity, you know? So what is the solution? You guys are trying to start a conversation with these people. I know the SCT has all these setups, and I got shown around by your CEO, and you guys have a really smart program. I mean, you guys have really thought about this. You've got halfway houses and workshops and programs. So what is the light?
Yeah, the light from my perspective is that we're looking forward now, and what we're trying to do is, so over the next 5 years, we would like to see maybe having 10 apartments, you know, not necessarily we'd own them, but, you know, we'd be able to put the most needy people into these apartments. Maybe they're in the middle of addiction, in the middle of mental health, but we give them their own space. You know, you put someone in a hostel, and what happens is you could have the crack dealer next door. It doesn't work. Hostel system doesn't work for the most difficult situations. But if we're able to then, it's called housing first, and that's what we're looking towards, developing something around that sort of model, where we give someone an apartment, give them the wraparound care, we start engaging them, and when they're ready, they start to make their steps. But giving them stability, you know, so that they ain't got to worry about the next door neighbour coming in and supplying them with any drugs. And, you know, if it ends up being women in that sort of situation, it's not going to be men next door that are going to pimp them out or anything like this. And, you know, and that's one solution that we're looking to try and develop over the next 5 years. And then the other one is we would love to have something like what you've seen in Acorn House, where we have 16 beds for men that are abstinent. We'd love to have something like that for women. Because
right now, and that's your facility right there on Shoreditch High Street,
that's right, yeah.
And there's 16 places, but you have to be abstinent to be there.
Abstinent.
But it's men only.
Men only.
And it's got a really cool, like, community center on the ground floor.
That's right, yeah.
You can learn how to cook, you can learn IT services, you can do woodworking.
Yeah.
It's
a lot
really
of therapeutic stuff happening there as well.
Good vibe going on there.
Yeah.
So that's good, but you're saying you're missing that step before that, where someone can, and a facility for women.
Yeah, I think that because everybody is different, right, you will know. Like, I don't know how you got your recovery, but some people will get recovery because that they just go, right, I'm stopping and that's it, and we're gonna do it. Some people use an AA type 12-step model, some people will use CBT, some people use a combination of many different kinds of therapy and do a 12-step. No, and so there's no one size fits all in recovery. So, and when we're talking about these apartments that someone would have and we'd support them through housing benefit, and then, you know, we'd have to fundraise ourselves in order to provide that wraparound care. This is just another way of doing the same thing. This is a way of maybe someone who does it, who just thinks rehab and abstinence is, I can't do it. But if we give someone a bit of stability, if we start wrapping around that care, if we're checking in with them every day, if we are meeting with them maybe in the beginning 2-3 times a week, if we're linking them in with other stuff happening in the community that's not all around homelessness and addiction, you know, just, I don't know, it could be a community centre, it could be a religious group or whatever, you know, and they get to see normal people, if you like, you know. That's why the way we'd see it, right? People that are not like our clients, where addiction isn't at the forefront of everything.
Right.
You know?
That's important, right?
I think that
otherwise
is
they're just
important.
surrounded by addicts, addiction, people talking about addiction all the time. I mean, that could be a grind.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that that's the case. Yeah, and I've seen plenty of people that have got recovery, and from all walks of life. I mean, not just the SCT, in my own life as well. I have experienced people, some that have just stopped themselves, got themselves involved in a community group, and then gone on to get recovery. Other people have needed a rehab. Some people have done the same sort of thing that we're talking about now, where there's a apartment that they get their wraparound care, but they've got their own apartment, a safe place that they go back to at the end of the night. And so, you know, all doors need to be wedged open with a crowbar in order to get people into recovery, to get people to have a life that we all want, even if we can't admit it in the middle of our chaos.
And you mentioned women. When I went to see you last week, you said, like, that's a rapidly growing percentage of the homeless population.
It has been a massively,
It's women and young people. First, talk about women. Why?
So my understanding is that when the law was changed in Britain around squatting rights, so they changed the law, you can no longer squat in residential properties. My understanding is that when that happened, a lot of women that would be on the street were squatting in residential places. And then in a quick period of time, the women who were now squatting in residential places were no longer able to do that. And so they ended up on the street. So then you started to see a larger percentage of people on the street were women.
And that presents its own problems.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I went to a conference where there was a lady who'd been working with women for 25 years. So in 25 years, she had never met a woman that hadn't been abused on the street. And her words were that when a woman's on the street, they make a choice. Do I want to be abused by one man, or do I want to be abused by lots of men? And so, you know, I'm not involved in the women's group because I'm a man. It's not going to provide a safe place for them if well, it's not going to be unsafe if I'm there, but it's not going to help them to open up if I'm there, because the perpetrator is a man usually. Not always, but usually. And so we run a women's group, and we, you know, my staff has 3 women on my staff of 4 of us. And that's deliberate because that for generations, for, you know, drop-ins like ours go back 100 years, you know, back to the Victorian times, and it's primarily in the past been men, and now all of a sudden it's women. So we need to invest more to try and reach these women, because the men already know and they come, and they're already coming, you know, and I can maintain something where the women in my team, they're trying to develop something, and it always needs that extra help to develop something rather than to maintain something. And so that's where we are at SCT in regards to how we're reaching women, and it's always evolving. We're always trying to change. We're always trying new things. It doesn't work today, but the same thing might well work in 6 months. And we're not closed to people coming and saying, have you tried this? And And I've said to people, we've tried that, but let's try it again, you know? Because it might work the second time.
Yeah. And what about young people?
So young people, there was also, there was a change in the law around benefits. So under 25, it's very difficult to get housing benefit. If you're under 35, it's capped at a much lower rate. We're also living in a time when if you go on the private sector, which is pretty much where anyone's got a rent now, I think they said it's like £775 a week, month, sorry, is what the average price for a single room in around the Shoreditch area is. And the housing benefit is not going to cover half of that, especially for under 25s. And so how are we going to find something? Because there's no shortage of people to take up these rooms. So we're asking landlords to take less than half the amount of rent for a more risky person who may well smash up their room. And we're asking them to do that for half the amount of money, and sometimes we're asking them not to take a deposit. No one's going to do that. You know, it's very difficult. So then where do these people end up? You know, we've got a guy at the moment, he's 22, and he is part of a scheme that that he got onto, and just a local couple have got a spare room and they've taken him in. And they're not getting anything for it, but they've taken him in. But had that scheme not existed, then he would be on the street. 22 years old, no family, vulnerable person on the street. You know, I see it all the time where I live. You know, the drug dealers often put the 14-year-old on the corner while they're at the other end of the road on another corner, just keeping an eye, because they know the police come past, the 14-year-old's getting a caution. They're not getting anything, but if there's any trouble, they'll come down the road and they'll sort out the trouble because they're a 35-year-old man who's tooled up. You know, I've seen 10, 12, sometimes 15 of these young boys and girls just in my neighbourhood, standing on the corner, selling drugs, you know, and one pass it to the other one. I got caught last week, you take it, you know.
How do you feel about drug dealers? Do they make you mad?
Yeah. To start with, yes. But at the same time, they're often the same people that I'm working with. You know, what does a 22-year-old do? You know, he's on the street. Well, how can I get it? Oh, I can just do that. You know, I've got a friend whose son has been to prison already for doing that. Comes out of prison. How else is he going to make £600 a day? That's what he was doing. And now you're trying to tell that person, you're reformed now, go work in Tesco's for £40 a day. I can work for 3 hours and get 600 quid. Why am I going to work in Tesco's? The mentality needs to change. We need more education for the young people. You know, where we work in the Tab Centre, they also run a young people's thing, trying to help these young people. And the funny thing is, I've met some of their young people, done a talk for some of their young people, and then found out they were in a children's home just around the corner from my house. I see them all the time in the fish and chip shops, you know, selling stolen mobile phones and all sorts of stuff. You know, so I often say to people, and I say to the guys that work in the same building, I say to them, if you don't sort them out now, I'll have to sort them out in 20 years when they come through my door. You know.
Should we legalize drugs? Because this is all part of the same problem. I mean, isn't it?
Should we legalise drugs? So the last place to do that, I believe, was Portugal. Yeah, I guess you've looked into this.
Decriminalised it, yeah.
Yeah.
They said it had some changes.
There's a big difference. My understanding is there's a big difference between Portugal and Britain. There's a family unit there. And so I've spoken to a couple of Portuguese guys who said, yeah, when they did that, what happened is every parent went, see them on the corner, you're staying well away from them because this is what happens. If you legalise drugs in this country, I believe what'll happen is there'll be no family unit in your urban areas that are going to tell them not to do this. It may work, it may not. You know, there's another scheme that was in the Wirral back in the early 90s, and that really worked, you know? So I think within reason to legalise it, possibly, within a clinic setting, within a engagement setting, but to just say, walk into your corner shop and buy a heroin or crack and we'll tax it, I don't believe that's the way forward.
No, that's
but
probably
potentially
not gonna work.
clinics where you can get it on prescription or something like this.
Well, there's that, and then there's in Portugal they just decriminalized it, so it's like the people buying don't get prosecuted.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole thing where you have clinics where people can go in and shoot up. They do this in Scotland now. They just opened one where they give them pharmaceutical grade heroin, but you have to come in and shoot up there, and they can watch you there so you don't overdose. But there's a lot of people that think that's completely insane, that someone can come in and get free pharmaceutical grade drugs, but they don't see the knock-on HIV, all the other deaths that also not only cause death, but also mess up the NHS. So, you know, you see all of this.
Yeah, so what you said there is absolutely right. But in the sense that they think that it's crazy, right? They think that it's not right, that it's insane. But that's the reason. That is, the whole thing is crazy and insane, right? Like, whatever word you want to use, but like, why would someone use drugs full well knowing that it's going to wreck their life? That's insanity, you know? So when people are saying we shouldn't do that, that's not right, blah, 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 I agree with them that it's not right and it's insanity. But at the same time, does it make it wrong from the position where we're standing right now? Because the position where we're standing right now is 2 people every day are dying on the street. I wouldn't be surprised if when they release the next quota of people, come next October time, that we're talking about that number being 2.5, 3 people dying every day for the year 19 to 20. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. In my drop-in, I've seen 12 people die since June. And normally we would see 12 people die in a year, but we would see 8 to 10 of them people die from the end of October to the end of March. So if we've seen 12 just over the summer, then I fully expect that number to be 25, maybe more, come April, which is double what we've been seeing. So the whole thing is insane, you know, like nothing is right. No, I don't debate with people what they're saying, oh, that's insanity, getting them to do this. I don't debate that, but at the same time, but surely it's not right also to just let people die on the street.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.